Welcome into episode 177. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCA Simmons, and at Night Sports Now. So UCF is not yet bowl eligible.
Sure aren't.
They have
point away from being
one
bowl
more
eligible.
shot. Yeah, one more shot at it next week against Houston. They lost 24-23 at Texas Tech, and honestly, like one of the it was a weird game, and also a game that you and I just were talking a little bit before we got on the podcast about how both of us were kind of just like the whole game, just like which I don't really get. Like I don't know why I felt that way, but the whole game I was kind of just like I wasn't really like that into the game. I don't know if it's penalties every 4 plays on both teams or like what it is. It was just like it was not a captivating game at all.
I think
I was just like,
I think you're onto something a little bit there, that between the commercial breaks and the penalties and the reviews, like it was just it felt like I was waiting for the game to start late into the fourth quarter. Like it just felt
there was
so
no flow to it.
No flow at all. It just so
it's funny that you say you're waiting for it
to be done.
You're waiting for it to start. Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like the whole game from the kickoff. I was like just waiting for the game to be over.
Yeah,
which is weird for it to be the second to last game of the season and bowl eligibility on the line. And I was just kind of like, and it was a game that they were in the whole time and leading 14-0 early, and then they kind of just and it's just I don't know, just wasn't their night. Like I don't even really have anything. I guess it's just my apathy from the game has carried over to this podcast because I'm just like I don't know, like everything pretty much went wrong in different areas, and like they just weren't good enough to win the game, and it's annoying.
Exactly.
Like, whatever.
And that's what I said to you right before we started is I don't have some grand explanation of, oh, it was this specific thing went wrong, or, oh, I'm so mad, or because part of it too is it's like, yeah, I could sit here right now and we could spend the next 30 minutes talking about how the throws JRP missed, or, oh, he had this pick or whatever. And I'm at the point where it's like, he has at most 2 games left in his UCF career. What's the point of analyzing JRP at this point? Like the JRP era is rapidly approaching a close, and it's not even like the game was really on him. I just know we all love quarterback talk, but I said to you right before we started recording, my honest take after watching that game is I think UCF and Texas Tech were 2 pretty similarly matched teams. It was a road game. UCF made some mistakes. They lost. I don't think there's any overarching messaging here. I think it's just, they played a close game. They made mistakes. They didn't win. I will say,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just keep talking. That's fine.
Okay.
No, that's my bad. I always do that where I finish a thought and then pause just long enough for you to begin a thought. And then I'm like, and just keep going. But I will say that I tweeted at halftime that I know that we're going to get to the end of the game and we're going to be talking about UCF's screw up that led to them not taking an easy field goal to end the half. And what would you look at that? UCF lost by 1 when they didn't get a field goal off. So there you go.
Yeah. And it's a lot of things. Like you can point at almost everything. Like there's the whole fact that getting down to that end of the drive or into that first half of the last drive, they only had 1 timeout. Like they called timeouts early. So they only had 1 timeout left. The time that they called that final timeout was kind of just oddly, like was an odd time to call it.
Yep.
And it left them in a spot where I'm sure they're, and I don't know, maybe they don't even call a play where that is one of the reads, but I don't think that was like the right read by JRP. I think he kind of just maybe panicked and was like, let me get the ball off, but throw the ball away and you get a field goal and maybe you win the game. I mean, it's all the whole.
He's way too late in his career to be making a decision like that in that situation.
Yeah. And so like, there was that. There was, he just wasn't like, he started out pretty good again. Like he was playing pretty well early on, but you look at the whole game and he was 50% on passes, and the ones they kept calling on like kind of the option plays, the RPOs where he was rolling out, he was inaccurate all night with those. He missed a couple throws. There were some like pretty acrobatic catches that had to be made on some. It's like he was just kind of off for some reason. But then you go down the list and you're like, RJ Harvey was not bad. Obviously, he scored 2 touchdowns. He had 78 yards, but 3.9 yards per carry isn't what we're used to from him. And, Colton Boomer misses a field goal from 32 yards out and has an extra point blocked with like 5 minutes to go, which is that final point in the 24-23 loss. But then the defense just can't stop the run, which is, I guess it's the usual outside of last week against Ollie Gordon. But it was just everything. And the fact that they only lost by 1 is, like you said, because Texas Tech also isn't very good and they also made mistakes and they just happened to be on the winning side of it. But like, it was just kind of one of those games where they didn't deserve to win. Texas Tech barely deserved to win and they barely won.
Yeah, it was 2 teams playing badly. And that's why it's funny what you just said is why I'm not even really in the mood to play the blame game, because, okay, let me tell you, the main thing I'm worried about from here is I'm worried about Colton Boomer, because He missed an easy field goal, which whatever happens. I wasn't sitting there like, wow, turns out my summer conspiracies that he isn't that good are proven true. I was just like, that sucks. Then he comes out and misses the PAT. It looked like it got hit with the hand, but still, it's one of those things where we've seen really good kickers have a couple screw ups and kind of crumble. And I don't know if he's that guy. I'm not predicting he is. I just think that's a thing to keep an eye on now because you always worry about that. But look, at the end of the day, yeah, Colton Boomer missed a 32 yards, right? The one he missed.
32, yeah, 32 or 33.
Easy. That is easy money for the vast majority of field goal kickers. They lost by 1. That would have been 3 points. So yeah, you can pin it on that moment if you want. You can pin it on the field goal they never took at the end of half. But at the end of the day, I don't know if it was busted coverage or what, but Javon Baker gets that big touchdown.
Yeah, it was. Well, no one picked him up. So they did a corner blitz and no one from no safety picked him up and he was wide open. So yeah, I felt really good when that happened because I was like, oh, they're like all of a sudden they're about to tie this game.
I know.
There's 5 minutes left, and then
but it doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, missing the PAT did not change the game in any way because Texas Tech got the ball back with 5.5 minutes left on the clock, and UCF never touched the ball again. And they ran out the clock. If UCF had made the PAT, they were in field goal range either way. Like the missed PAT ended up meaning nothing. And that's why it's hard to assign blame. Do you assign blame to Boomer? Do you assign blame to Plumlee? Do you assign blame to the defense that just had to get the ball back with any time left after 5.5 minutes and couldn't? It just was one of those games where there's no larger messaging here. There's no, well, they got to fix this or that. There's one game left. They played a team that they're probably pretty similar talent-wise to, and they didn't play well enough to win. That's it. They lost by a point. Sucks. I think the larger thing for me is that as we're coming to a close on the 2023 season, I just hate what-if seasons, and this has just turned into a what-if season. They lost to Oklahoma by 2 points. They lost to Baylor by 1 point. They lost to Texas Tech by 1 point. They had the lead on Kansas State in the third quarter. It's frustrating that they are 5-6 now, and that will forever be, because mark my words, this happens every year with every team in the history of college football. The season ends, and whatever happened in the season or how you got there is forgotten. All that goes in the record books is the record. And for the rest of time, UCF's first season in the Big 12 will be 6-6 or 5-7. The context of how close they were to being like an 8-4 team, like so close to that, 7 total points away from that, actually, is just going to be lost. And it's just been frustrating how it's not even like, well, it's just the one problem. It's just been a weird group of things. I also have to say really quickly, I tried not to, and I did it. If you're watching the YouTube version, I always am holding something in my hand, like off screen. Like, I don't know why. I just like grab stuff on my desk when I start talking. And for 2 podcasts, if you listen to our post game pod after what the hell game? Oklahoma State. Yeah, just the last game that I mentioned how Bailey came in here with new clothes and he had a t-shirt that he wanted to cut the tags off of. So we had some scissors to do that, and the scissors have been on my desk, and that's what I've been waving around like off screen for the last two episodes now. And I've realized that like I've been trying really hard to not get on camera because like holding like a prop smoking pipe or a pencil doesn't look as threatening as when I hold up like scissors, like a freaking blade. Yeah. So I've been trying not to, and then I immediately did it right there. So that's good. Just letting everybody know that that's what's going on with me right now. How are you guys doing, listeners? You having a good day?
I was going to say, I think all of those games you just mentioned too, and like I know it wouldn't show it in the final score, and they weren't the better team by any stretch, but like they were in that West Virginia game for the majority of it, and if they were halfway competent on defense and they stopped turning the ball over every time they got in the red zone, that's another game they could have won. Like they're not like so far away, or they weren't so far away this year from being competitive, and they were competitive in most games. I think Kansas is probably the only one where they weren't.
They've played 8 Big 12 games, and Kansas is the only one that they were not competitive in, which is kind of cool, but also terrible.
That's like, it's annoying because they could have been competitive and they could have won more of those games, and we would have felt like really good about this year. And then next year, I'm not sure they're going to be in the spot where they can be this competitive. Like I don't know if they can be in this many games as they are. We'll see, but it's just,
I'm changing my take on that a little bit, because we've talked about that a lot, which by the way, I'm just looking, it's like, it could be worse. They could be Cincinnati, who just has just been getting crushed game after game and just got destroyed by West Virginia. It could be Houston, whose coach went to go argue with his own fans after the game in the stands.
And then said it didn't happen.
But we've talked a lot about how next year all these guys are graduating and what does that look like? And I'm that's still true, but I'm feeling a little less apocalyptic about it, just because as the season has gone on, so many young guys on defense have started to shine. I mean, Nakai had a really nice pick tonight. Damari did not have a great game. Damari got burnt a couple times, but still, there's a lot of young talent on defense that's starting to step up. So I'm more adapting from, I think next year is going to be really rough, to I think next year they might actually be able to field a pretty solid defense. And it's just a question of what they have on offense and what they can get in the portal that we'll see. They're not going to be I hope fans aren't expecting the breakthrough next year of, okay, we did our 6-6 seasons, so now we're going to go 9-3, because next year is very much a building year, just like this year was, because of all the talent they have to replace. And because they're 2 classes into really having true high school classes. Gus's first couple of high school classes were great and the best classes in program history, but we're leaving a lot of room for the portal. And now they're finally at the point where they're signing 20 plus high school guys.
Yeah, and I think the funny thing about like the game that Damari had was it was kind of just a reminder that turnovers are just like interceptions and sometimes just be luck. Like if you look back at those games, like in hindsight, you're like, yeah, those were tipped passes and not an indication that all of a sudden like he is just the top cornerback on the team. And yeah, I mean he's still, I think, experiencing some growing pains. He was out of position on some plays and just kind of a step late, whatever it was. So it's kind of like a reminder that like, yeah, those 3 turnovers were great, but also like he's still young and he's still
he's a true
sophomore. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't even really know where else you go from here. Like I think we've been on the podcast for maybe 10 minutes. Like
no, I know where to go from here, because let's talk about next week, because this is it, guys. We're here. It's the final game of the season. And like, it's just such a strange inflection point, because okay, they're going to play a Houston team who's not good. Houston lost again to Oklahoma State today. They weirdly took the lead early, and I was like, oh man, did UCF just break Oklahoma State? And then Oklahoma State ran all over them the rest of the way. But if UCF beats Houston, that's it. Season was a success. I know that some fans aren't going to feel that way, but at the end of the day, the goal we laid out for the last 2 years coming into this season, and especially once we knew what the roster was going to be like, was your goal in season 1 is to make a bowl. The transition from Group of 5 to Power 5 is always really tough. Go ask Utah, go ask TCU, really go ask Houston and Cincinnati. There's no easy way to do this. The goal was to make a bowl. So if they beat Houston, the season was a success. I don't want to hear it from you. We can talk about individual moments that are going to piss us off for the rest of our lives. Those exist. Baylor. I will be 90 years old and talk about how the Baylor game ruined my life. Like, don't worry. But still, the season overall was a success. What's weird about it is I hate that it came down to the final game, because if they win, season was a success. If they lose, you suddenly went 5-7, mostly with players who aren't going to be back next year. And it's just so funny to be on this tipping point of, you win the game, you did it. You lose the game, wow, things are bad. I hate when games come down to that, but that is so where we're at with this Houston game.
And what's like, I don't know. I am feeling really, I don't want to like say, oh, this is what's going to happen. If that game doesn't go the way everyone listening to this podcast wants it to, I will be very, very, very upset, because this is a Houston team that, 1, is not very good. 2, is seemingly falling apart because their coach, like you mentioned, went over to allegedly get into a shouting match with some students after the game. And some people want him fired anyway. They're probably not going to fire him because whatever, the money, all that stuff. And they have nothing to play for anyway. Like they lost to Oklahoma State today. So now they have no shot at going to a bowl. So like, that's all the recipe of like, UCF should go out there and just dominate.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like they might not. And if they don't, and not even if they don't, like if they don't, I would love for them to dominate and make it an easy one. But even if they don't, just win the game, get to a bowl, we can just say that from there. Okay, cool. They went 6-6. There was moments where they could have done this differently and gone 7-5, 8-4, but you got to a bowl, and then we can talk about whatever bowl it's going to be. And I don't know. I feel like, and it happened in 2016, so it's not like it's never happened. But the idea of getting a bowl and being like, okay, good, we made a bowl, and then losing the bowl would just leave a sour taste in my mouth of being 6-7. But it's, at this point, it's whatever.
A bowl just feels so far from now that it's like, I don't know, I'll have to see who they're playing, because we talked about this too. It's like, and this is going to sound so stupid and Power 5 fan like, but it is just the world we're in now very much, is like, whether or not the bowl matters is really going to depend on who they're playing. Like if they get some random bowl assignment with some, like the example we gave last week of what Illinois in the Birmingham Bowl, I don't care if they win or lose that game. Like I really don't, and no one is going to. But if it's like something with some heat, or if it's a bowl game in Florida, like a Gasparilla Bowl versus someone, or like a USF, maybe, then it's like, okay, now there's some excitement here. But I don't know. I'm with you that given how Gus Malzahn's tenure's gone since he's been here, I'm really in the boat of like, they could totally just go lose to Houston. Like it could be one of those games where on paper they should win. Not only should they win, they should probably win pretty easily. I mean, Houston scored some wins this year. They beat West Virginia and Baylor, but Baylor, as we know, is terrible, and what happened with UCF happened. In West Virginia, they beat on a Hail Mary. They've lost to Rice. They've lost 5 Big 12 games by double digits. They're not a good team. They lost to Cincinnati. They're not good, and it's at home. Yeah. Should be an easy win, but man, 2022 Navy should have been an easy win, and 2022 East Carolina should have been an easy win, and 2021 Navy should have been an easy win. It's like we've seen this before, where we all sit back and go, "That's a gimme, no problem," and then UCF goes and drops it. So I don't know. I hate that it's come down to this. I hate that we have to actually go into this last game to decide what kind of season this was, because man, whether they win or lose is going to totally define the season.
Yeah, and if I did the research right, they're 10-7 under Gus in one-score games, and
it's not terrible actually. It's
really
not terrible.
It's not horrible, but when you look at the opponents, you get more annoyed.
Yeah, but I will say, but also at the same time, like UCF did not win those under Heupel. Like every single one-score game was a loss. Like 10-7 is not a bad one-score record. It's just more. I don't even know. I was going to say it's just more teams that shouldn't have been one-score games, but that's not true. On the road at Texas Tech is not a game that should. I mean, they lost. It's kind of funny if you like subtract the whole season. Like if you told me at any point this offseason that UCF was going to go to Lubbock and lose by 1, I would have been like, oh, that's acceptable to me. Like based on what we know now, that is totally fine. But it's just that they've come so close to win so many times and just haven't gotten them. It's just getting to me as the season goes on, as we just keep doing this of coming so close to a win and then just not being able to get it.
Yeah, and I think when I did this, I just did this right before jumping on the podcast. I think they were, what was it, 8-3 or no, 8-4 in one-score games under him. So they're 2-3 this year in one-score games. And you look at the 2 wins, and it's Boise State and Cincinnati. And then you look at the frustrating losses, like coming that close against Oklahoma, blowing that lead against Baylor, and then tonight. So like it's been frustrating, and I don't know if that's really them trending in the wrong direction or them just taking a step up. But either way, like just win next week's game, and I'll feel okay.
Also, one thing I've learned from the last 2 weeks is, and I said it on our past podcast, is like fans, like including us, like I'm not like, this isn't one of my like, I hate UCF fans thing. Like this is true for all sports fans. We're very fickle, basic beings. Like when our team wins, we're happy. When our team loses, we're not. And like as annoyed as I am right now, and Twitter's not doing well, if they beat Houston, they'll be like, yay, they did it, bowl game. Like it'll be fine until the bowl. Like it's just kind of the way it goes. And it's not to say that, as we're kind of looking back on how the season went, it's not to say that it didn't have its moments. I think that you needed to come out of the season with one signature, like really cool, memorable thing, and beating number 15 Oklahoma State very much was that, especially now they've gone on to beat Houston pretty easily, and it's clear that they are very good and they're probably going to the Big 12 title game. We have that moment. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of weird to say this because it's probably wrong, but it's almost like, is it less painful as a Houston fan where you just get beat up on in all these games? Or is it more painful for UCF where like you're really close to winning all of them, but then lose most of them?
I don't know, because I think if you're Houston or if you're Cincinnati at some point in this season, you've probably gotten numb to it. And you're like, all right, This is just this kind of season. For UCF, it's almost every week where it's like, oh, they've turned a corner. And it's like, oh, wait, never mind. They couldn't win the game. Like it's a little bit of both. It's just depends, kind of pick your poison. But like it's just like you said, like last week was really fun. Tonight kind of sucked. Like winning is fun. Losing stinks. Okay. Like that's just, and if UCF wins next week, it'll be they've won 6 games, they've lost 6 games. It'll be we had 6 fun days, we had 6 like not fun days. Like,
well, hey, look at it this way: UCF is plus 41 in their last 2 Big 12 games. So there you go. I think the other thing about, I'm actually going to take back what I said. Well, I didn't say, I didn't take a stance, but as far as my question on whether it's worse for us or if it's worse for Cincy and Houston fans is the other on a more macro level. The other take here is like, UCF was clearly the best of the new 4. I think we can, with 1 game to go, pretty clearly say that now, which for me, that was the goal. And on top of that, they're also they're recruiting so much better than the other 3. I mean, none of them are recruiting well at all. Houston's class is like 90 something right now.
Yeah.
Cincinnati's having problems under Satterfield. So if you look at it from that perspective, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're like, hey, I think we hired the wrong coach. The team sucks. We don't have good players. We're not getting more good players. We're getting blown out in all our games. This is bad. If you're Houston, you're like, hey, Holgerson's been here for like 5 years. We had all this time to prep for the Big 12. We came in and couldn't do anything, and our recruiting class is 90th. If you're UCF, you're like, hey, we have a lot of guys graduating, but in our first season, we were close in a lot of these games. We lost a lot of games by 1 score. We were competitive in all of them except 1, and we have the number 2 class in the conference coming in next year. We're going to be fine. So from that perspective, it's like, yeah, I'd rather be a UCF fan. It's just, hey, I don't like when they lose, and they lost tonight, so I'm kind of upset about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not really any other way to put that. It's just, yeah, it's annoying. It is annoying, but it doesn't, I don't know, for some reason, and I don't know if it's just the way I approached this game and kind of thought they were going to lose anyway, but like, it's not as annoying as like a lot of the other losses this year. Like it, because I think, I don't know if these kind of just felt like it wasn't supposed to be a game they won because of all the things that went wrong. There were other things where it's like this one thing went wrong, and if it didn't, UCF wins. Tonight, it was just so many different things happened, and what was that face for?
Oh, there's a tweet. I'm just making sure this is the actual account. I think it is because it's followed by everybody. Kyle Israel has weighed in. Okay. If you're a newer UCF fan, then it means nothing to you, but it's fine. We'll just roll with it. Kyle Israel tweeted, "We used to find ways to win. Now we find ways to lose. Let's get one more win and go bowling. Missing a PAT with the game on the line is brutal." I don't think that's a fair take, to be honest with you. I actually really don't think that's a fair take for a couple reasons. One, the whole we find ways to lose, we find ways to win. Like, I kind of think that's a bunch of like, I don't know, like BS, frankly. Like, I don't buy that under Gus Malzahn. I mean, you just said his record in 1-score games. Like, that's a pretty good record, especially they're coming off of with Heupel. My other thing is, again, with the missing a PAT, it didn't impact the end of the game. Texas Tech, there were 5.5 minutes on the clock, and they drove down the field like it was nothing. If Boomer had hit the PAT, they would have just taken a field goal, and they just hit a 51-yarder. Like, that really didn't impact the end of the game. So I think that's really harsh. I don't.
And I think honestly, what kind of turned the game, this is kind of completely unrelated to that, maybe. It is about the game though. I think it's a good point that Trace Trocco made. Trace Trocco, Sons of UCF. He said, like, I think it was at halftime, he said how Taj Brooks was going to have fresh legs in the second half, and he absolutely did, and I absolutely took advantage of that. Like, I think in the first half only had like 11 or 12 carries, and I think his average was still like 8 or 9 yards a carry.
Yeah.
But then the second half, they kind of just continued to feed him, and he ended up putting up the numbers that he did. What was it? It was 24 carries for 182 yards and a touchdown, which even him having 24 carries, like so when I do the Around the Big 12 every week, I usually am seeing him with like 30, 31, 35 carries. And I'm like, how much? Like, he really is like their only running back. Him and the quarterback were the only two with carries on the night. So it was just, I think him only having that many carries was probably the way, I guess time of possession ended up being sort of similar. But UCF had the ball. And I think that's probably one of the more frustrating things was that they got down to the red zone, was it 3 or 4 times and didn't score? So yeah. That's where the
offense basically was just dead in the water after the first quarter. I mean, they scored really quickly to go up 14-0, and then that was kind of it from them for basically until the fourth quarter. They scored their second touchdown with 11 seconds left in the first quarter, and they didn't score again until a field goal they settled for at 10:21 in the fourth quarter. I'm just getting annoyed as I stay on Twitter. I'm going to call another tweet. UCF Fleet 0406 just replied to my tweet about us doing this podcast and said, "Who could be accountable for this? And don't tell me it's talent when we boat raced a top 25 team last week." Do any of you watch college football? I'm genuinely asking. Like, if you don't, that's fine. But like, do any of you watch college football? I really don't. I've never understood the fans who are like, well, result A happened last week, so that means result B will happen this week. None of it makes sense. Teams go up and down all the time. Auburn got blown out at home by New Mexico State tonight. Are you gonna tell me New Mexico State has more talent than Auburn because that happened? Sometimes shit just happens. Oh, damn it. I have to edit the. Okay. Well, this is an explicit podcast. Sorry. I'll tag it. It's like, I don't turn this into, oh, well, Oklahoma State, whatever. It's like, also, how can you, I don't totally understand that tweet of that. It's the coach's fault they lost this, but it's not the coach's fault they beat Oklahoma State. That doesn't make sense to me. Fans get mad when they lose games, whatever, but it's like, and I know it's Twitter and it's reactionary, but it's like, I see so much ridiculous stuff from you guys.
That's why lately when they lose, I just ignore everything for the rest of the night, because everybody's just going to get like in their feelings and tweet some things and whatever. It's fine. But, I forgot what I was going to say other than that. That's cool. But yeah, I guess that's probably where we can leave it, right? I mean, I'm
not even like overly defensive of Gus right now. Like, I don't want to turn into like, it's like, yeah, this season's been frustrating and they've lost games they should have won, but it's just, there's no reality where, and if they lose to Houston, we'll be having a conversation, believe me, but there's just no reality where if you told me in the offseason they were going to go 6-6, I'd be like, wow, fire everyone. Like, that's what we were expecting. How many times this podcast did we say 6-6 or 7-5 is probably what we're looking at? And I know it's easier to say that and then deal with it. And honestly, I said on a previous podcast, it would have been easier if they just flip-flopped wins and losses versus just not winning for 6 weeks. That wasn't fun. Hasn't been a super fun season, but we've gotten some memories out of it. Go beat Houston, and on a high note. That's it. What?
I found another tweet.
Did we just spend like the next 20 minutes just finding tweets we don't like?
Let's make this the last one because people will probably be mad if we don't bring it up anyway. But so someone posted a screen grab of the I'm very confused actually, of the Kobe Hudson touchdown on the first drive. And he said, someone said robbed. And I guess this was when it happened, which is fine. Okay, this now that I realize it's when it happened, it's fine. Because UCF scored a touchdown on that anyway. It wasn't a difference in the game. Keep saying people were like Kobe was robbed of a touchdown, like he was personally. But
they scored a play later, didn't they? Or like,
but I just was laughing because Kobe. Yeah, I think it was the next play. Kobe quote tweeted it and said weirdos with like a facepalm emoji. So I don't know if he's calling the refs weirdos or the UCF fans weirdos. I'm not sure. But
again, though, that's like we're getting held up on weird moments. Like we're like, the missed PAT didn't change the result of the game. Kobe touchdown didn't change that drive at all. They still scored a touchdown. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not sitting. As usual, I'm not sitting here and say don't be mad about the loss. It's just more like This is the season, guys. I mean, it's P5. And what I'm worried about really going forward is that I can tell, and here's how I can tell. I'm using the deduction of reading your tweets because you're saying it. A lot of you are waiting around for the next 2017 of when's UCF going to go back to being undefeated? When are we going to have our next season where we go 12-0? It's not coming, guys. It's not coming. This isn't the AAC anymore. Look at the Big 12 every single year. The absolute best teams in the conference are 10-2. TCU was a freaking fluke last year, and it was a huge deal. And look at this year, and now that's going to 16 teams, all 16 of which are going to be very, very even in talent and resources and program building. It's 12-team playoff. They don't need to be undefeated, but I can already see the recipe for there's going to be a season, whether it be 2025 or whatever, where UCF is 9-2, right? And they're going into their final game of the season against whoever, and they just got to win that game to go to the Big 12 title game. And everyone's just bitching that they lost 2 games. I can't believe that they lost to Kansas State earlier this year, because it's just that I just feel like somehow 2017 became the standard, and that's been a problem for a long time. But the goal was a bowl, guys. And I know for some of you, the goal was 9-3, and I've said it all off season. I've said it all season. You were stupid if you thought that. That was never going to happen. So let it go. Move on. 8-4 was the absolute ceiling. Bowl was a goal. They're probably going to a bowl. If they lose to Houston, I'll get on this podcast and I'll be even more mad than you are right now. We'll go crazy. We'll say really bad things that we'll then regret. It's going to be an awesome time. But hopefully they'll just beat Houston and we won't have to do that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Do you remember how – I'm just going to keep it going. Do you remember how, up until, the first game of the season, even a little bit into the season, there were fans straight up actually genuinely not jokingly saying that they were going to go 10-2? I think we could win the Big 12
people
year.
were thinking they were going to go to the title game and talking about booking tickets to Arlington and all that. And it's just...
Fan is short for fanatic.
But yeah.
But anyway, thank you so much for listening.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks for listening, all you fanatics out there. We will be back early next week to preview a game that will be win it or win and go to a bowl, or lose it and go home forever until next season.
Go home forever?
It's for some
UCF
players,
football
yes.
program will be canceled if you
for some players they will go home forever.
How do you feel about the fact that we're going to watch John Rice Plumlee suit up for UCF in a regular season game for the last time a week from today? Are you emotional?
No, it's fine. I honestly, and I'm glad I didn't tweet it because I would have aged really badly. Early on in the game, I was thinking this, and I was thinking, it's a shame that he's kind of finally become the quarterback that we were promised, late, but then he had the rest of the game that he had, and it was fine. But I don't know, it was last week and this part, I would say the Cincinnati game for the most part, and then last week were the John Rice Plumlee that we were promised, or the one that everyone made him out to be. And we got him for a game and a half, or two games and a half. And then now he's got one more game, or maybe 2, and then whatever.
You're not a Game of Thrones guy, are you? Did you ever watch that show?
No.
Okay. For those of our listeners who do watch Game of Thrones, you'll also know why I'm finding the John Rice Plumlee we were promised is funny to me. But yeah, I don't know. He never was. I'm just gonna say it. We did this for 2 years where he'd have one game where we were like, oh wow, what a great game, and then he wouldn't. He was a lot better this year. I don't think you can take that away from him. And he was hurt for most of the year. I think that definitely was hindering him tonight as well. But it's just kind of I'm ready for that era to be over. It was a lot between the Mikey drama and then the injuries this year. It's just never been fun. And I don't know what the hell the future holds. And maybe next year we'll have some terrible quarterback and we're like, God, we miss JRP. But for now, I'm just kind of ready to be past this quarterback era.
If we're saying next year, God, I miss JRP, we're gonna be in a bad place.
It's 3-9, guys.
We'll be having dark days. But yeah, so we will be back early next week to preview the Houston game. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at ByCA Simmons, and at Night Sports Now. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.